remember this.
Well, do I need to record it so that you can remember it, though? Because what if
No.
I speak...
I'm going to type it into a Google Doc.
Okay. All right. If you ask me to repeat myself, I'm not going to be able to, though.
That's all good.
Okay.
Just go slowish.
Oh, that's a
Slow-ish.
setting my brain doesn't have, Matt.
What? No-ish?
There's no ish. There's no
Damn it.
slow.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, I'll do my best. I'll catch the cliff notes and then I'll expand it. That's how we'll work this, all right?
Yeah,
I'll just do the bits that like
Adderall,
are important.
Or speed. They're my 3 levels. Which one do you
I
want?
I see. So we're either like 17 coffees deep, 4 pingers, or like we've met the Iceman.
Yeah, that's what we got. That's what we're dealing with.
And then there's a secret 4th tier, which is just called Scarface.
Welcome to 2Girls1GarbageCan, the podcast where we discuss the intricate dumpster fire that is the Australian political system through the lens of historical events to give us some context to make sense of what the fuck's going on. Because, well, what the fuck is going on, Matty? That's the question.
Well, Tamara, look, what the fuck is going on is always a good question when it comes to Australian politics because it is very frequently a complete fucking nightmare. But today, I have got I was going to say a little thing for you guys, but it's not really a little thing. It's pretty major in political history for one state in particular.
I was going to say, Matty, I know you. There's nothing little about you. Let's just get that out there.
Don't tell everyone, or else they'll all want me to come and visit them for coffee.
Oh, we're getting this heated this early on in the piece. God.
I know. I haven't even started the intro to what I'm talking about, and we're already flirting. Jesus. It's something about having all of you guys watching. It just does it for me.
We like to have an audience.
Today's tale from the garbage can of Australian political history begins with the dedicated work of an investigative journalist and an investigative television reporter, and ends with a resignation, 2 by-elections, 4 arrests with jail terms, and 1 knighthood being stripped. So as you can no doubt tell, we're in for a bit of a ride.
Someone went to prison. God,
Several someones went to prison. Several someones went to prison, and a knighthood got stripped.
And a knighthood
those
got
of you,
stripped.
Yep.
Ooh.
Those of you who already know about this piece of Australian political history from the scant information that I've provided so far, well done to you. Fantastic sleuthing. Stick about until the end and tell me how well I sum it up. For the rest of you who haven't worked it out yet, let me introduce you to the Fitzgerald Inquiry.
Oh. Okay. Woohoo! Righty. Matty, you went all out. God, you're trying to one-up me, aren't you, bitch? What's this?
Baby.
Fuck off. I bring an assassination. You're like, okay, well, gauntlet's been thrown. Yep.
Here we go. Corruption, baby.
Fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty.
All right. So, first, let's set the scene. We're travelling to Queensland for this one, and we'll start in January of 1987. Fucking good year. When, on the 15th of January, a 32-year-old journalist named Phil Dickey, working for Queensland's Courier Mail, gets an article onto the front page detailing dozens of illegal brothels, which were believed to be operating in southeast Queensland, which the Queensland Police Force were intentionally ignoring. The article prompted a former police officer by the name of Nigel Powell to write to Dickey about what he knew. The contents of their correspondence led to a series of 10 newspaper articles detailing police corruption relating to vice and organised crime. On the 11th of May 1987, the ABC show 4 Corners, at the time hosted by investigative reporter Chris Masters, ran an episode called The Moonlight State, which went into detail on the topics covered by Phil Dickey's articles, as well as some shocking revelations of its own.
Love Four Corners.
What these two journalists uncovered was a massive web of crime and corruption perpetrated by a significant group of the Queensland Police. The graft was called The Joke, and it involved a web of illegal gambling, bookmaking, brothels, and massage parlours, and stretched back decades. Essentially, it involved bribery and protection racket, as well as other charges that I'll detail later, that involved payoffs and bribery to cops by underworld figures in return for the police ignoring the existence of these illegal operations and even going so far as to provide protection to them. Bribes flowed from underworld figures who ran these operations all the way up to members of the Queensland Licensing Branch, a subsection of the Criminal Intelligence Unit, who ordered officers to turn a blind eye.
Can I just, once again, because I know I make this
Yep.
comparison all the time between cops and bikies.
Mm-hmm.
But can I say at least the bikies do provide protection to the brothels, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, they are unlike the cops, who the only protection they provide is not showing up to arrest people. That's the only protection you get from the cops, is we won't show up and harass you. The bikies would at least send some thugs around to protect the girls while they're at it, you know? Like,
Absolutely. Mike just said you need a times we broke to laugh counter. Yes, and at times that we were unnecessarily flirty counter as well.
do you know what? We should actually, that's a good idea. We'll put that in the rules for the podcast, along with mispronouncing all white men's names. And
oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All the podcast rules.
Love it.
Flirts and giggles.
Love it.
Yeah.
Flirts and giggles, absolutely. They're the two counters that we have, one in the top left, one in the top right corner of the screen.
Yeah. All right,
just tick over with each.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a live chat to talk to as well. Alrighty. So, before the airing of the Four Corners piece, the Australian Federal Police had concerns for the safety of Chris Masters, the reporter who was researching the episode. The AFP ordered Dave Moore onto a protection detail for Chris, based on credible information that corrupt members of Queensland Police would attempt to do him harm. Resources of the AFP were discreetly used in order to keep a lookout on Masters. As Masters got closer to the truth of the matter and began sniffing around the Fortitude Valley red light district, he realised that he was being shadowed when Moore, the officer who was assigned to him, pointed out that people were surveilling him. As Masters got closer to releasing the episode of Four Corners and busting the graft ring open, the police brotherhood, who were members of The Joke, which is the name of this graft, started making moves to try and destroy Masters before they got exposed.
Ooh.
They had planned to set Masters up by planting an underage boy in his hotel room with the aim to have his name smeared regardless of whether the allegations could be proven or not. However, before they could finalise this action, Masters had already departed Queensland to return to New South Wales. Masters only found out about this plan months later after hearing it through his contacts.
Oh my God. Does this remind anyone of a particular gentleman by the name of Julian Assange? Like this playbook?
Yep.
I'm sorry, but no thought given to the kid they were going to use in this situation either, obviously. No. Because there is an actual victim in the situation, regardless of whether he did anything or not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. When the end came for this graft, yeah, fuck the police, absolutely. ACAB every day. So when the end finally came for this graft, the person managing it, the bagman Jack Herbert, an officer who had engaged in corruption and bribery during his entire time with the Queensland Police Force, was passing on around $60,000 a month in bribery payments to various high-ranking officers.
How much?
And it's $60,000 a month.
A month?
A month. In bribery payments to various high-ranking police officers, and it's estimated that he received more than $3 million in payments total to pass along, of which The police commissioner of Queensland at the time, Terry Lewis, was alleged to have received more than 600,000. For some context, $60,000 per month in 1987 is the equivalent of 184,000 a month today, and the 3 million assumed sum that Herbert had handled in total is today equivalent to over $9.2 million.
So
Yeah,
we're
Ben, that's
talking
exactly why I
about
gave the context for the money. Yep.
we're
So the
talking
police
about
commissioner received approximately $1.8 million in bribes.
so that's the equivalent. That's the equivalent. We're talking about two families' incomes per month
Mm-hmm,
given
mm-hmm.
out in bribes by
Yep,
the same
easily.
government that
Two,
today
two,
won't.
two families' incomes per year
No,
given
per
out in a
month.
month. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no. The family's
Oh, yeah,
total income
yeah.
for the
I get
year
what you're saying,
given
yeah.
out in a single month.
Two families' yearly incomes given out in a single month. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
jump back to the timeline. Okay. The day after the Four Corners report aired, Queensland's acting Premier, Bill Gunn, called for a judicial inquiry while the Premier, and I'm going to fuck this name up, but it is a white dude, and one
Excellent.
of the
He's a
rules of the
white dude. Yeah.
podcast is to fuck up white dudes' names.
Exactly. It's the whole point.
While the Premier, Joe Bajelki Peterson, I got
I don't
no
feel like
idea if I
that's
was
fucked up
right there.
enough.
Okay. Joe Bajelki Peterson.
Fabulous. Yep.
There we go. I'm not adding Sir Joe to his name. He can just be Joe.
Absolutely not.
I'm not adding the Sir. No chance.
Did he get to keep the sir?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, well, they made a
I think
mistake.
he
We're correcting it now.
I think he received the Sir afterwards.
Oh, fuck that.
So yeah, Bill Gunn, the acting premier, called for a judicial inquiry while Joe was out of state on a US trade mission. Now, none of the allegations made by either Dickey or Masters were new. They had popped up several times in the past,
That's what I
and
was
some
going
of
to
the news
say.
organizations, some of the news organizations that ran the stories in the past had been forced to pay damages to people who alleged that their reputations had been damaged.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Peterson was notoriously litigious in response to any unfavorable press coverage. When the judicial inquiry was being arranged, the government had initially preferred District Court Judge Eric Pratt, who was the chair of the controversial Police Complaints Tribunal and a close friend to the Police Commissioner Lewis, to head the inquiry, which led to fears by journalists that it would be a whitewash. After consulting the legal profession, Attorney General Paul Clawson opposed Pratt as unsuitable, and he was removed from consideration.
Like, again, this is one of the things that I kind of feel like we need to continually point out, though, is they tell us that the law is equal and it's even for everyone and everything. But in order to have someone who's perhaps not an asshole and on the copper's side heading this tribunal, people had to fight for that. That wasn't just...
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't happen in the law. Do you know what I mean? Like with these extenuating powers that the government are being granted at the moment, the anti-terror legislation, what people don't realise is that they already have fucking exorbitant powers, ridiculous powers, scary powers. Extending those is fucking terrifying. Literally fucking terrified. All the fucking time. But anyway.
Yeah.
But they were putting these special things. They put surveillance on people and then you have to go and fight to get it taken off under a legal code that apparently has the presumption of innocence.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? And then these guys, you've got all this evidence and all this knowledge that they're out there doing the wrong thing, and no one even looks twice at it because there's no one out there who can take them to court. The law's all even and whatever, but who's going to take them to court? Who's going to make them pay? The people don't have the power to.
Or the money to oppose them.
So everyone knows what these motherfuckers were doing, but nothing gets done about it because no one with any power to do anything about it had any interest in doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of
Yep.
the world we live in.
You're
Like,
absolutely correct, mate. 100%. And you can see from this story, it's been going on for nearly 40 plus years. Like this is in the 80s. After Eric Pratt was dismissed, the government then approached Ian Callanan to head the inquiry, but he refused on the basis that he would be perceived to be too close to the government. So we had someone who was dismissed and we had someone who recused themselves. Callanan then recommended
oh,
Fitzgerald as
you
a
mean he did the
suitable
bare
head to the
minimum?
inquiry. Yeah,
He did the
he did
very
the
bare
right
minimum.
thing.
As an officer
Yeah,
of the law, he went, maybe I shouldn't be involved when all my mates are on trial.
yep,
Bare minimum achieved. Well done, white fellas.
yeah, congratulations, bud. Callanan recommended Fitzgerald as a suitable person to head the inquiry. He also drafted the terms of reference for the inquiry and then represented the Queensland government before it. Whilst the terms of reference were initially narrow, restricted only to the specific allegations raised against specific persons named in the media over a period of just 5 years, Fitzgerald used his moral authority to expand the inquiry to examine any relevant matter. As a result, the terms of reference of the Commission were extended twice. So, for people who don't know, the terms of reference are basically the court dictating what is allowed to be brought into this investigation as evidence. And initially, they said only the people that the media referenced, only over the last 5 years, nothing else.
And one of the things
But
that can do is mean that if other people are referenced in a document or in something that also referenced one of these other people, it can't be used because it
yep,
risks affecting these other people. So it then limits the evidence you have. So it's one of those tactics, again, that those in the know, being the police and those sorts of people, will use to restrict the amount of information that the court can use against them. So,
hmm,
yeah, it's very exciting to see
yep,
it not working.
yep. So Fitzgerald, as the head of the investigation, as I said, used his moral authority in order to expand the inquiry to cover any relevant matter, and it got extended twice. So basically, it went from very narrow pool of reference to broad, wide-reaching. You can pretty much look at anything.
Woohoo!
Um,
That's what we want. Open up the
yeah,
sheets.
right. Fitzgerald began formal hearings on the 27th of July, 1987. So the Four Corners story came out in May, and just 2 months later, the formal hearings began. So pretty quick for Australian legal system, to be honest. Um, the inquiry
Incredibly
was
quick.
the inquiry was initially expected to last for only about 6 weeks.
Can,
Instead, oh, go ahead.
because obviously they were aware of it. Okay, so they were providing
Mhm.
before the story came out. They were providing AFP cover and protection for the journalists involved.
Yep. So the
So
AFP was, yes,
so there was a
against the
heads up.
Queensland cops.
Yeah. So there was a heads up already. They already knew that this was going to be coming before the story broke. So they obviously had a plan to do this. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
You can you can kind of see the how the wheels were turning in the background. You can kind of put the pieces
Yep.
together and figure it out. And it's sort of like, okay, anybody noticing any modern day parallels between all this stuff coming out about the CFMEU and suddenly the Labor Party is jumping up and down about an inquiry?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Just, I don't know, just, modern day parallels to government
Yep.
suddenly being very active on an issue that everyone knew about forever,
Uh-huh.
but suddenly they've got a reason to be active about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as with everything that we cover here, we do tend to find that there are parallels from historical things that we cover to modern day ones. There is a
Who would have
specific
thunk?
reason that I chose this particular topic, and it is exactly because of those CFMEU investigations that Labor are jumping up and down about, because
Yeah.
this rang very true to what's going on right now.
Not again,
So,
like, there's definitely bad stuff going on in the
mm,
CFMEU, definitely, but there
oh,
is a
without a doubt.
reason. Hey?
I said without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. And I will also say that when it's like, I stand with the union, I stand with the workers, that doesn't extend to the armed wing of the state. Ever.
Correct.
Like, at
Correct.
all.
Yeah.
Like, I
No
don't
doubt. No
care
doubt.
who's against the armed wing of the state. I'm on their side. I don't fucking care. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Soz.
Yeah. Exactly. As I was saying, the inquiry was initially expected to last for only about 6 weeks under the initial parameters of what was allowed to be included. However, after the expansion of it, it instead spent almost 2 years conducting a comprehensive investigation of long term, systematic political corruption and abuse of power in Queensland. So this extended past the cops, right? Public sittings were held on 238 days, hearing testimony from 339 witnesses. On the 28th of August, a licensing branch sergeant by the name of Harry Burgess confessed to corruption and implicated Jack Herbert, who was the guy who was nicknamed the Bagman, who was dealing with all the bribes. And he also implicated Assistant Commissioner Graham Parker. In turn, Parker then rolled over on the Police Commissioner Terry Lewis on the 16th of September. Now for the findings of the inquiry.
No
Did you want to say something,
honour
T?
among the police. Is there?
Yeah, no. No,
Like you turn up fewer underworld figures when you decide to go after an underworld boss than you do coppers when you decide to go after a police commissioner.
yeah, exactly. And like another thing that I should say that I haven't actually included in my notes, but another thing I should say is the Fitzgerald report, this whole process helped to rewrite some of the ways that rules were applied in the court system in Queensland, including that indemnity from conviction could be given to witnesses if they rolled over and provided evidence against people higher up in the chain than them.
Mm.
So, this is what started that from being a thing that happened. And it's probably the reason why the assistant commissioner rolled over on his boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, time to get to the findings of the inquiry.
Right.
So, Fitzgerald's report was submitted on the 3rd of July 1989, nearly 2 years to the day that it began. As a result, a number of high profile politicians were charged with crimes, and the Queensland Police Commissioner Terry Lewis was charged with corruption. Leisha Harvey, a former health minister, was charged with misappropriating public funds as part of an investigation that resulted from the findings of the inquiry. She spent a year in jail. Don Lane, a former transport minister, was sentenced to 12 months imprisonment for falsifying his expense accounts. Lane's resignation then resulted in the 1989 Merthyr State by-election. So there's your first by-election and 2 jail terms. Okay, we're on to the 3rd jail term. Brian Austin, another former health minister, was convicted of misappropriating public funds. He was also jailed for a year. Jeff Muntz was convicted of misappropriation of ministerial expense funds. I don't believe that he served a jail term. The resignation of Senior Minister Russell Hines, who was nicknamed the Minister for Everything, after damaging allegations were made against him during the inquiry, led to the 1988 South Coast State by-election. So there's his second by-election. Russell Hines died before he could be brought to court to face corruption trials. The Queensland Police Commissioner Terry Lewis was charged with corruption, jailed, and stripped of his knighthood. He was charged with 15 counts of official corruption in 1991 and sentenced to 14 years in prison, but was paroled in 1998, less than halfway through his sentence. The inquiry eventually outlived the, I'm going to fuck his name up on purpose, Bajelki Pietersen government. Micah Hearn became the new premier, and Bajolka Potterson was deposed by his own party. Evidence revealed by the investigation, including testimony from Bajolki Potterson himself, caused significant political damage and led to a power struggle within the National Party. He eventually resigned as Premier after an unsuccessful attempt to have the Governor of Queensland sack all of his ministers after they had deposed him as party leader.
He had the ultimate tantrum.
Yeah, he tried to get every single person sacked
They don't want me
so
in
that
the
he could keep the
sandpit,
job.
so I want to get all of them kicked out of school.
Yeah, exactly. Joe was eventually put on trial for perjury in respect to evidence that he gave in the inquiry. The jury in that case was deadlocked and brought about a mistrial.
Yeah.
However, in 1992, it was revealed that the jury foreman, Luke Shaw, was a member of the Young Nationals and was
Oh.
identified with the Friends of Joe movement and had misrepresented the state of deliberations to the judge. So he had lied to the judge about the state of deliberations in order to get a mistrial for Joe.
Yeah, because the judge would have said how many holdouts are there, and if he said, like, at the moment, I think there's about 50%, when really it could have just been him.
Yep.
And the judge doesn't check with anybody else. He just goes, how many holdouts are there? Is it worth hanging out? Is it worth trying to keep deliberating? No, if there's that many holdouts, it's not worth it. We'll just have a mistrial declared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, according to an ABC TV analysis, a later inquiry conducted by Justice Bill Carter found that the selection process had been manipulated by ex-police officers, helping to put Joe before a jury that was led by the Young Nationals member Luke Shaw. The special prosecutor announced in 1992 that there would be no retrial because Joe, then aged 81, was too old to stand trial. Yep.
Okay. And again, this is why there is no such thing as equality before the law.
Yep, exactly. 100% correct.
Oh, God, fuck off. Fuck all the way off.
The Queensland Police Special Bureau, which was formed on the 30th of July 1940 and subsequently renamed to Special Branch on the 7th of April 1948, faced criticism for being used for political purposes by Joe's government in the 70s and the 80s. For example, enforcing laws against protests, sometimes outnumbering the protests or using provocateurs to incite violence so that protesters could be arrested, and investigating and harassing political opponents. Following a recommendation by the Fitzgerald Inquiry, the Special Branch was disbanded in 1989, having destroyed its records before Fitzgerald could subpoena them.
This is actually still happening.
Yeah.
So ministers will still routinely destroy records when they leave office. And then when you try and do a freedom of information request on them, they'll return and just say, oh, we destroyed them when we left office because we didn't want to leave a whole lot of paperwork behind. And it's several times the High Court have found that it's unconstitutional for them to do it. And they're just like, they just keep doing it. Like,
too late. We did it.
Yeah. But I did. But you shouldn't. Oh, but I did. But you should stop. Oh, but I don't want to. Like, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, the law's equal for everyone, except
that it feels illegal because it is. They absolutely should not be doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and the court has told them several times it's illegal, and they just keep going. Oh, but we already did it. So what do you want us to do about it? We can't do anything about it. We already did it.
So yeah, the special branch of the Queensland Police were basically used as a hit squad by Joe Bajolki-Peterson.
Excellent.
Used to incite violence at protests so that they could start arresting protesters, used to intimidate political opponents, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in large part due to public anger over the revelations in the Fitzgerald report, the National Party was decisively defeated in the December 1989 state election, which brought the Australian Labor Party to power for the first time since 1957.
Huzzah!
So the Nationals had held power from 1957 until they were crushed in the 89 state election.
Fucking 30 years of that shit. Can you imagine?
Yep.
Holy fuck.
32 years of National Party
And
just doing whatever the hell they wanted.
And to be honest, this is the entire reason that you need to have elections with regular turnover of people in power, is so that they can't
Yeah.
develop those kinds of relationships that become
Yep.
so like intertwined. Because the thing is, we all know that there is going to always be a certain level of glad handing and, you
Mm.
know, bullshit behind the scenes in politics. We all know and understand
Hmm.
that.
Yep.
But they couch it in terms like lobbyists and you know,
Yep.
make it, they gentrify it, and
Hmm.
it's all above board, and you can kind of, at least you can see the minister's diaries in theory and see who they're meeting with, so that you can, you know, they, when the relationships get that connected and that incestuous, that it's no longer, they're no longer even putting that veneer of politeness on it.
Mm.
It gets cancerous. Like, it's really fucking horrendous. And this is because we know, as I said, there of course is always going to be a certain level of that bullshit going on in politics. But there is a whole other level to the toxicity we're talking about here with the Fitzgerald report. Like, some of the...
Oh, yeah. Big time. Like, we haven't even talked about the sentences that were handed down to police officers who were engaged in corruption.
Oh,
I've
let's
just
go.
covered the high level stuff. This
Yeah.
literally went all the way to the top. The
Yeah.
police commissioner was involved in it. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you're like, you know, you hear there's a conspiracy and it goes all the way to the top, and you're like, oh yeah, come on, this is the most fiction shit I've ever heard. But no, this is one of those situations, man.
Yeah, truth is often crazier than... I shouldn't say crazy, that's
Absolutely.
not the right word. Stranger than
Wilder.
fiction. Yeah,
Yep.
wilder.
Yep.
More bananas.
So now we get to the fallout. Okay.
Okay.
5 years ago in 2019, 30 years on from the Fitzgerald inquiry, Ben Smee wrote an article for The Guardian that indicated that systemic corruption remains rife within Queensland, according to the Attorney General, who implemented many of the recommendations from the landmark Fitzgerald inquiry. In an interview in 2019 with Dean Wells, who is the man that became Attorney General when Labor took power in '89,
Mm.
5 months after the Fitzgerald report was tabled, so that's when Labor took power and started implementing these recommendations,
Yeah.
Wells told Ben Smee that the Criminal Justice Commission, now known as the CCC, did have some success in cleaning up the police service for a period of time, but eventually the germs mutated to defeat the antibiotic and the disease came back in a new form.
Mm.
Process corruption is still rife in Queensland. Wells was particularly critical of the way the Triple C operates based on what it calls the devolution principle,
Yeah.
which means the vast majority of complaints about public sector agencies are ultimately handed back to those same agencies
To deal with.
to investigate and act upon.
Yeah.
It's not just Caesar judging Caesar, it's Caesar judging Caesar very benignly,
Yeah.
he said. What we've got is a commission that over the years has been captured by the interest groups that it is supposed to be regulating, and that doesn't work really well.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not what Fitzgerald had in mind. Institutions change. You might not find brown paper bags like in the old days of the Fitzgerald inquiry, but you will find quite a bit of people accommodating other people.
Mm.
We didn't go wrong. All law reform is a dynamic process. You're building on the shifting sands of a social system that's constantly changing. What you really need is a Fitzgerald inquiry every generation. You need a Fitzgerald inquiry in every jurisdiction every 25 years because society is dynamic. They change, they adapt, so you need to change the antibiotic.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's our story for the day. It was a bit of a long one and took a significant amount of research to find some of the quotes and smaller stories inside the narrative. So I do want to thank each and every one of you for sticking through us as we went through that.
Oh, I was
Was
going
quite
to
a bit.
say it wasn't as bad as me last week with my... How long did it take me to get through? Bloody hell. ACAB, 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 ACAB,
Okay.
ACAB,
Yep.
ACAB,
Final thing to remember for this pod: always, every time, ACAB.
ACAB.
All right.
Always
And
care about bunnies. That's what ACAB
yeah,
stands for,
exactly.
guys.
All cats are beautiful.
All cats are beautiful. ACAB.
Yep.
I'm going to get that
Yep.
tattooed on my
100%.
ass.
Yeah. 11312, my favorite combination of four numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, thank you so much for joining us for this week's dive into the depths of the trash fire that is Australian politics. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, make sure to drop us a follow, do all the usual engagement things, and help us get the word out there. You can find Tamara and myself on the social media links in the description below. But for now, it's garbage day, so the girls got to take the trash out. Bye.
See ya.